My name is Janet Ahrberg, and today is October the 15th, 2009, and I am visiting with Mary Jane Stanford.
Correct.
In Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Story Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. And welcome back to campus, Mary Jane.
Thank you.
Is it Mary or Mary Jane?
It's Mary Jane, but when I was here at college, my roommate renamed me Janie.
Okay.
And so I've been called Janie ever since college. Mary Jane up to then.
Okay, Janie it is then. Okay, so we're going to welcome you back to campus today for the Women of Willard WOW reunion.
Yes.
So anyway, welcome back, and let's start off with having you tell me about your early life, where you grew up, your family, your school, your personal history here.
I'm from Blaine County. Grew up in a small town and Hitchcock, and at the age of 8 I moved with my family to Okeene. My daddy worked in the wheat elevator. I was the 6th of 7 children, and my parents lost 2 children when they were teenagers in separate accidents, and that made a very deep impression upon our family. I was 1 year old when my sister was killed, and I was 8 years old when my brother died in a freak baseball accident. We moved to Okeene. My dad worked in the wheat elevator. My mom was a full-time homemaker, as they were in those days. Just, we had homemade bread, and she washed and ironed. I remember my mother used to iron our washcloths, our dishcloths. And when I was a housewife, I thought, why would my mother iron? And she ironed the sheets we slept on. But that was her value system.
Right.
Mine was not that way. Grew up in Okeene, graduated from high school there. And then it was just always understood I would go to Oklahoma State. I was very active in 4-H. And I was fortunate to have some scholarships that took me there. And now as I watch my grandchildren look at several different colleges, I never looked anywhere but at Oklahoma State. I knew I would always be a teacher. I knew I would always go to Oklahoma State. And so I guess life was simple as far as decisions were made.
What were some of your activities in school? You said 4-H, but were you involved in were you an athlete?
Yes.
An athlete, there we go.
Girls' high school basketball was very important. Started playing that in grade school and then junior high. And that was in band. I remember that our band director was so disappointed in our band room, which was off the high school, and felt it wasn't getting the right sound from the band. So he took, do you know what those cardboard egg cartons are like? Where they'll put 2 or 3 dozen on them. He covered all the walls in the band room with those cardboard egg cartons so that we had better sound.
Wow.
And that was something that he did with a little help from band members. So we had band, had 4-H, and then the church was very important in our life. My dad was Sunday school superintendent, taught lots of Sunday school classes, and then I became involved in Methodist Youth Fellowship.
Okay.
And somewhere along that, one of my things that I've enjoyed doing is public speaking. And I participated in various talks, contests. And
how large was your graduating class there in Okeene?
excuse me, I believe it was 27.
Okay. Did most of them go on to college at that time, or were you?
No. Probably... were there as many as 6 of us, maybe 7 of us that went on to college.
Okay. And did they all go to OSU, or was the split group?
OSU was by far the choice.
Okay.
And probably out of my class, only 3 of us graduated from Oklahoma State.
Okay. Well, you say, what influenced you to attend OSU? You said you just always knew you were going to come here. Was there something about your parents or anything in a family background that influenced you? You said your father was involved with a wheat elevator. Mm-hmm. Was it that agriculture background that you think influenced you?
I'm sure it was. And then the oldest sibling was my sister. She was 14 years older than me, and my sister had gone to Oklahoma State.
Okay.
And I'm sure that guided me. Then I had a brother. Wesley came over here to Oklahoma State. Then my brother David.
Okay.
So it was a family thing.
It was a family thing. Okay. So at that time when they were here, did you come to visit them at OSU?
No, O'Keene was a little more than an hour from Stillwater, and that was a long trip. And if we're going to make a long trip, then we're going to go see the grandparents in Medford,
Okay.
or family down in Oklahoma City. So I don't remember visiting.
Okay. Okay. What year did you enroll?
Would you excuse me just a little bit? May I go back to that answer?
You bet.
I did visit Oklahoma State, but I came as a 4-H'er.
Oh, okay.
Came to the roundups, and so I felt I knew the campus. It was exciting to me, and so it was not foreign when I came as a student.
Okay. Well, when you first came on campus, even as a 4-H'er, what was the thing that most impressed you about the campus and maybe the town of Stillwater?
Oh, the town I don't remember. I remember. Isn't it Washington? Mm-hmm. For some reason, that street I remember, I guess because it leads up from Highway 51 to campus. Theta Pond. And then later when the library was built and the Union, that was just before I came on as a student, I just thought the architecture here was so significant. I love the red brick, and when I have returned today, it was so much fun driving around on campus and seeing this beautiful architecture that is honored in even these brand new buildings.
That's true. What years did you live in Willard? Did you live all 4 years in Willard?
Yes, ma'am. 1954 until graduation in May of 1958.
Okay. Were you assigned to Willard, or did you specifically request Willard?
I must have been assigned.
Okay. And did you have a roommate?
I did, and that was one of my friends from my high school graduating class. We came over, and I remember the summer before we came to college, she and I worked so hard on, we'd have matching bedspreads, and we made the curtain that we'd have in our room. And the first semester, we knew that we were not good roommate material. Somehow we came over, and we just split. Mm-hmm. We did not split enemies, but we split. And so she and I decided that she would find another roommate, and I went to the counselor at Willard and took on a counseling position. It was important to my family that I have a job, and that was one of the first jobs I had.
Okay. So you switched roommates, or you got another roommate?
No, I went into a single room.
A single room.
Remember
okay.
at the end of the hall are the single rooms,
okay.
and I absolutely loved it.
Okay, but you were on second floor.
No, I was on first floor at that time.
Okay.
And then I met Joni, and I believe that it was our sophomore year that Joni and I decided to room together, and that's when I moved up to 217, and I was able to get a job working in the cafeteria in Willard Hall.
Oh, okay. And so did you work there as a student?
Yes.
And so you helped with the food service and stuff?
Yes.
Wow. So how did they prepare the meals back then? Did they bring in a lot of food, or did they do it all cooking in the kitchen? There was a big kitchen, I guess. Or?
Huge kitchen. Everything was cooked there. Mrs. Patillo was the food director. She ran a really tight ship. I loved it. I think now back on it, I think it was hard work, but gosh, I love scraping those plates and making it clean. Yeah. And I guess I loved it because the next thing you knew so many kids.
Right.
You were friends to lots of people.
How many hours did you work?
I don't remember that.
Did it ever interfere with your schooling?
Never.
Going to school?
No, it was. They correlated.
And did you work all 4 years?
Yes. I got 50 cents an hour working at the beginning, and then my junior year, I don't know if it was because of experience or age or what, but they advanced me to 75 cents an hour, and then my senior, the fall semester, before I went out on practice teaching, I was raised to $1 an hour, and that was because I was cashier. And I loved that place. I loved it.
Were you able to sneak out food and bring it back up to your room?
Don't remember that happening. I'm sure I took cookies.
Okay. When you first came into Willard Hall, what was your first impression of it? We got an older building on campus, and what was your impression? You said you loved the architecture. I'm just kind of curious to.
Love the main room. Those windows and glass doors to the floor. We had elegant drapes. Remember, there were throw rugs throughout, large rugs throughout, and then there would be sitting areas where you could take your family or your friends. Lamps. There was an elegant flavor about it, and I was very impressed with it.
Did it feel like home to you?
My home was not that elegant, so it was a step up, and yet very comfortable.
Okay. What was your room like? Let's talk about first your single room that you had. Mm-hmm. Maybe the size, and then what was in it, and then maybe when you were moved into with Joni.
The single room was, we just had that bunk bed and the dresser, and I don't remember and then we had the desk and the chair. Gosh, it was so simple, but it was so satisfactory. You know what we did? We lived a lot outside of the room. I just remember studying in the library. That was study in your room.
So actually, that's where you went to study, was the library. Mm-hmm. Okay. And did you spend a lot of time there? Did you go in between classes? Did you go at night? Did you go in the morning before class?
Don't remember going in the morning, but I do remember if after class it was an hour break, you would go in and do some study work. And I was telling my grandchildren not so long ago that that's where you began dating. And that's where I met their grandpa. We would go the first floor, and they're at the study tables, and the next thing you know, you're smiling at each other and, I don't know, laughing. And then pretty soon, you can't study forever. So after, maybe 2 hours, well, then there was the invitation, well, let's go over to the union. Well, when you go to the union, it was always understood you go to the 4th floor, because that's where you would dance. Mm-hmm. And I came from a small community where dancing, I don't know if it was allowed or we just didn't dance. So I took dance classes, learned to jitterbug, did the waltz. Oh, I just thought life had opened up for me. And that's where Bob and I...
Wow, they even offered classes, though. I've never heard that.
Yes, we had jitterbug classes.
So
I remember so well.
That is so neat. And did Bob take them with you? The dance classes.
Yes.
He did.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's really neat. So do you remember Willie, the parrot?
Yes.
Or the parakeet?
Yes.
How was that? How did you cope with Willie?
He was just a part of Joni's in my life. And Joni is just a delightful person. So, if she brings Willie into the room, it's okay. But that was an awful trick when Willie was hidden from her and we told her that he had flown away, because it just broke her heart.
I can imagine.
And she's out there at Theta Pond calling, Willie, Willie.
Well, I think that's awfully nice of you as a roommate to put up with a flying bird. That's pretty neat. What was it like trying to have a personal conversation on the floor phone? That was...
you would hold the phone like this, and then you would cover up, and turn your body if someone were to walk by.
Okay.
So, but I remember when the phone would ring and someone would go out and answer, and it was not your call, then you would scream at the top of your lungs for whoever the phone call was. And then it was their responsibility to hurry up and get out there and get that phone. Because you did not want the line to be tied up, mm-hmm. especially if you were waiting for a phone call.
Was there a limit on the minutes you could talk on the phone? Was there anything posted?
No, not that I remember. I think it was just a matter of respect for
courtesy.
The next person.
Okay. Our understanding that there was a common shower and restroom area on your floor.
That's right.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? Like maybe how many women shared that facility, and what was that like for you to experience?
It was very like an institution. You had the private stools And then the showers, you kind of might want to always clean it before you started your own shower. You took your towel and your soap down to the shower, and I do remember us throwing a girl in the shower when she was pinned or engaged.
Was that tradition, or is that just for this particular girl?
I remember it. So maybe it didn't happen real often, but it was something so important that the person got thrown in the shower.
When you were in there, did you like make up your hair? Did you roll your hair in there, or did you have to go back to your dorm room to do your hair? You know, like women wore a lot of curlers back then.
Yes.
To curl their hair and stuff. So did you do that in that room or in the shower area, or did you
No.
do it back in your room?
We usually went back to the room, and Joni and I had this one lavatory, and she and I don't know why we were so weird about this, but we liked to wash our undies. There were washers downstairs in the basement, but Joni and I would put our undies in the lavatory as though they needed to be soaked, and then I guess we thought it was a two-step job, and they would soak and soak. And so then to brush our teeth, we'd go, rather than go ahead and wash our undies, we'd go down to the large bathroom and do our hair and brush our teeth. But usually the hair was done there. And we had this one mirror where we kept our makeup.
How was the laundry room down there? Did you just have one washing machine and dryer, or was there several?
No, I think there were at least two.
Two. And that was adequate for that many women?
I don't remember. It was hard to keep track of making sure your clothes stayed with you, but I think that was sufficient.
Okay. Was Willard considered to be a popular or prestigious hall at the time that you recall? Was it really the people, when you said I live in Willard, they were just like, wow, you get to live in Willard?
I don't think so.
No, it didn't seem that way to you.
No, they think just a good bunch of women.
Okay, so you didn't think of it any different than the Stout or Murray?
I always thought that Stout was elite.
The elite one, okay. And the reason why you thought that?
Have no idea. Wasn't it newer?
I think it was.
And so maybe that's where the influence came.
But if you had to say one thing about Willard from the other two women dorms, what do you think in your mind set it apart?
Well, we had quality women.
There we go. Okay.
No, we just had great times. There was closeness. I know that this interview is being conducted because of this particular group of women. But I think if you were to ask us, we go on. There are other groups that we are associated with. And it was just a high caliber of women. They were compassionate. We were concerned for each other. And I think that's what makes the difference.
Set it apart. Okay. I'm going to discuss some of the WOW traditions with you now, and you just comment and tell me what you think about them and if you were involved with them. One was Willard Beach.
You know, I don't remember the Willard Beach at all.
Not on the second floor, the women going out? Nope.
Don't remember that.
What about Christmas traditions? Did you participate in any of the Christmas traditions?
We had them. I remember we had a tree, and I remember there were times, it seems like on every Monday evening was dance hour. And if I remember right, it was from 7 to 8, and we would invite a different fraternity or hall, men's hall over, and we would dance. And this was a time where we would dress up. You know, this was just not sloppy clothes, and this was an opportunity to meet new men. And so this was a tradition, and then at Christmas time, of course, this carried on. I think the singing of carols was important. I can't remember right now how or who decorated the tree, but it was there, and it was large. It was quite beautiful.
Okay. You mentioned about throwing the women in the shower when she became engaged, and that maybe just been an isolated incident, but you don't recall them singing or serenading anyone that got engaged there?
I do.
You do? They
Yes.
did that?
When there was sort of a step procedure, my husband and I were, we were pinned in the spring of our junior year. then became engaged. No, first year dropped. You know what a drop is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we were dropped in the spring of our junior year. I was pinned that summer. Then I became engaged the spring of our senior year, and we were married in May.
Oh, nice.
And that's the procedure. Now that when Bob gave me his pin, I remember I received a bouquet of red roses. Bob was farmhouse, and then that evening the men came over and serenaded me.
Oh, neat. That's really neat. Do you remember any of the dorm scrapbooks?
No,
Don't remember anything about having them in the dorm. Okay. Well, living with Joni, then you may have heard her tell her story about the 1955 panty raid
yes.
on Willard. What do you recall about that incident?
I just remember it was so exciting. Isn't that strange that sane people think that panty raids are exciting? But I remember standing there. We had this corner room, and there's these male students down below, and they recognized Joni and me and call us by name. I didn't see anything wrong with that at all, but then they came upstairs, and the drawers were gone through our dresser drawers, and panties were taken. I remember Mrs. Proctor, who was our house mother, was very disturbed over our behavior. And then on the next week, the president of the college, and I don't believe President Wilhelm was the president at that time. I believe it was
Bennett?
Oh, that's it. And he made mention through the old collegian that it was so embarrassing that the panty raid was written up in the Russian newspaper. And he was very embarrassed. And I thought, oh gosh.
Okay. Well, that's interesting that's another part we haven't heard. That's interesting. What were your resident hall hours on campus?
We had a curfew. I believe that we had to be in as a freshman and sophomore by 8 o'clock. Weekends, 10 or 10:30, and the seniors had it made because they could stay out till midnight or 12:30.
Okay.
And here again, if you were not there and there were still some girls out, Miss Proctor would flash the lights. You went a running.
You speaking of your husband that you're married to now, was it your boyfriend in college? What did you all like to do as a couple? Did you double date? Did you go on double dates? And where did you all like to go as a couple?
Bob and I met when we were freshmen, but we did not begin dating until we were juniors. And I remember those first 2 years of college were so much fun because you had a different date every night. Every night being Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. And that was felt very proper. That there was nothing unusual about that. And you would go to the Union. Was never a lot of money spent. You'd go to the Union and dance. It would not be unusual for your date to start at the library, and then you go to the Union. You might go downtown. Was it the Leachman?
Yes.
To the movie theater. And then the college did a wonderful job. There were always dances. And that's when Doc Pruitt took our picture. And, that was so much fun, those dances. And so that's how you got to meet so many different people.
Okay.
Because you went to a different dance with a different guy.
Did you go out to? Did the men take women out to eat a lot during that time?
I don't remember that being a big thing. I'm sure we did, but
Okay.
not as I see it in
Today.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. Do you recall what penalties were given for coming in late past curfew?
I believe that you were called before. There was Miss Proctor, and then there was the woman, Miss McNeely, I believe, that was beneath her. And you had to go speak to her about why and give an explanation. And I'm just amazed at the obedience. I think the women at my time had an understanding that if the curfew is at 10 o'clock and you're not there, you were expected to be there, and you are wrong. And so you must apologize or make amends for that. And that was just something that was very deeply instilled.
Was there a dress code at Willard?
You couldn't wear pants. It was always a dress. And I remember on Saturday morning, you could come down to the cafeteria in curlers and a house coat. Not pajamas, but you could have a house coat on.
Okay.
You know, back to the cafeteria, I worked with a young man in the cafeteria. He was older than the rest of us. Older meaning he was probably 24, 25. His name was Salty. Hope that's all right to say that. And Salty bootlegged from Kansas to Stillwater. See, Stillwater was a dry county at that time. And the back of his car was his trunk was a major ice chest. And I remember Salty was the primary dishwasher in the cafeteria. And this was an important position because he was handling that really hot water and steam. And Salty had tattoos on his arms. I can't remember what armed forces he served in, but it seems like that he had. But he was paying his way through college with the bootlegging.
Bootlegging. So did you know if he had quite a bit of customers there?
I didn't know. I just knew that probably every other weekend.
That's interesting. Was PDA, public display of affection, a serious infraction at Willard?
Oh. You
or on campus, I guess.
You didn't see it.
You didn't see much of it.
So I remember hand-holding was, to me, very, very commonplace.
Yeah.
But a kiss was a kiss. And it wasn't just something that happened frivolously.
Yeah. There was something that was
There
taken
was a
very
commitment.
seriously. Yeah,
Yes.
commitment. Okay, you talked about your dorm mom. I think you mentioned her. That there was a Mrs. Proctor.
Yes.
And then who was the other person?
Mrs. McNeely, I believe was her name.
Okay, were there two at one time, or did they?
One is the house mom, and then Mrs. McNeely, I think, took care of, more specifically with the girls' personal needs.
Okay. Did you have a good relationship with them?
Loved them.
Did you?
Both of them, yes.
Wonderful.
Mrs. Proctor was just this beautiful, lovely woman who wanted to have a really neat, well-run house, and we always pushed to the edge.
How old a woman would you say she was?
I'm sure she was in her 60s.
Okay. What were some of the special hall events or activities that you remember? Like the women talked about bringing in popcorn and having popcorn parties and getting together just pretty much every night, just to have visits and catch up on everything.
Just to hang out with each other. I remember that we had the first day that I came to Oklahoma State, that was the fall of 1954, my parents drove me over. And I always thought that my daddy was more nervous than I was. Couldn't understand why. And I believe this is the beginning of Howdy Week, and one of the women, Jenny Wyatt Norman, who is a member of our group, came up to me and she said, Mary Jane, we're getting all the freshman women together in the downstairs lounge area and want to know if you'll give a reading. That was something that I did frequently. And I said, not a problem, I can do that. She said, okay, and so we set it up. And I remember my daddy saying to Mother, well, I guess we can go now. I think Mary Jane's going to be okay. And it was like the transition from, he saw that I was under the wing of someone. And
good hands.
Yes, but I remember these meetings. I remember Howdy Week, great time. I ran for freshman class secretary and won that position, and that was one of the most fun times in my life. The competition, meeting people I'd never met before.
That's neat.
And those are some of the activities that I liked.
So what other activities? You mentioned that. Were you, how was your academics? Were you like Orange and Black Quill? Was that existent at that time?
I was not. Give me another one. I remember I almost made one and it broke my heart.
There was mortarboard.
Mortarboard I did not make,
Okay.
and it was a heartbreaker
It was
for
a
me.
heartbreaker.
I just,
But
you set your goal.
Right, but the thing about it is you were active on campus. You just didn't go. And
I
you
was
worked.
I was in the student senate,
Okay.
and that again was a great experience for me. Tom Tate, now deceased, was the student body president, and it was just fun to mix with people that I'd never known before. This is so silly, but I remember I had gone over to one of the student senate meetings, and they were all gathered in the back room. We met on the second floor of the student union. And I walked in and I said, "Hey guys, what's going on?" And one of the boys threw a magazine on the table and said, "Want to see this?" And it was the first time I'd ever seen a Playboy magazine. I didn't know that's what you did at student senate meetings. But it was a time of great fun.
Great fun. Special memories of your years in Willard. I know as you're talking, you're speaking about those special memories. But is there one in particular that really stands out? Maybe when you're having a hard time, a friend reached out to you, or just a moment where you felt like, this just doesn't get any better than this.
I was a member of the Wesley Foundation, and I was in a prayer group with Paul Maggie, and I cannot remember. There were 2 or 3 others of us. And we would go into, I don't know if you're familiar with the Wesley Foundation building, but there's a small prayer chapel. And I remember praying with those friends. And that was a time of my faith being built. That was a time when I was learning about God. And I probably cherish those prayer times as much as anything.
That's very neat. Were there any tough times for you in your Willard experience? You talked about your first roommate. You all decided that it probably wasn't the best thing. Was there any other times maybe that was a little hard for you that you'd like to share?
I never managed money well. And I'm so sorry about that. I do not know now what I would have done differently. But it seemed like I never had enough money.
Yeah.
And I just wish there could have been someone who could have talked me through that.
Well, when I was in school, I used to write those $5 checks to the student union, and my mother never could understand why I was writing $5 checks all the time. Anyway, that was my experience. I remember I had to try to explain that to her, but anyway, we didn't have those cash machines. So anyway, was there diversity in Willard? Do you remember any ethnic or international students that were in your dorm at that time? And if you did, how did you feel about that?
I remember when the first Black or African American student came, a female, and she moved to the 3rd floor of Willard Hall. And I did not go out of my way to get acquainted with her. I don't even know what her major was, but I remember it was a big deal that we have a Black female on campus. Other diversification coming.
Was there any athletes? Maybe there were some athletes that were at that time. Do you recall?
Oh, let's see. I can't recall.
Okay.
Although I remember we went to every basketball game and football game. But I think what I saw from my background is the difference between wealth and poorness. And I remember down the hall in Willard, there was a girl who was from Tulsa. And I thought she was probably the richest girl in the world. She had 2 cashmere sweaters and 10 bottles of Revlon fingernail polish. And I thought, gosh, I know people could be that rich. And so learning to live with that kind of diversity. I was in a psychology class, which means I believe that was meeting in Old Central. And the professor, I can still see him, although I cannot recall his name. He said, I'm going to pass out this survey, and I want you to fill it out. And on the survey, I remember the question very well. It said, are you a member of the working class, the middle class, or the upper class? Well, it was a very easy answer. Working. My parents have always worked. So a couple days later, we turn them in, and the professor comes back to class, and he said, this was a very interesting survey. And he said, I'd like to ask again, now, how many of you in here are members of the working class? And I looked around, and none of my friends were raising their hands. Well, by gosh, I'm just like them, and if they're not going to raise their hands, then I'm not a member of the working class either. And there were a couple of guys who raised their hands. And then he went through all those of you who are members of the middle class. Well, I better answer. And so several of us raised our hands, and I don't remember what the percentage was on the upper class. And the professor said, well, isn't this interesting? Isn't this interesting? This isn't what came out on the paper. Well, now today, having gone through teaching myself, he was so out of place. But it taught me something about myself. Mm-hmm. I was identifying myself by those around me, which shows I had lots to learn.
Right. Well, what a wonderful experience, though, and that it stayed with you all that time.
Yes.
You know. Were you active in the Willards or OSU Women's Residence Hall Associations? Did you hold a hall or floor position?
No, I was on the student senate.
Okay.
And the other thing that I was involved in, I believe it was my senior year, we were having a meeting there on Willard too, and the most exciting thing happening in my life was that I was engaged and I was going to get married, and so my friends, out of just sheer honoriness, said, hey, why don't we nominate Mary Jane to be in the varsity review? Oh, that's so funny. They nominated, and I won the nomination. So now I go to varsity review, and those are pretty girls, and they dance, and I'm going to be one of them. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. You know, we were like Rockettes, and isn't that funny that I just treasure that? Mm-hmm. It was an absolute fluke, but I loved it.
That's so cool. Let's come to this page. When Willard was converted to administrative use, was that controversial for some of you as being alumni of Willard when they changed? Did that bother you in any way?
It didn't. I had been away from campus. I had not returned, and I did not see it as a problem.
Okay. Now, did the Women of Willard group participate in the renovation plans of Willard? And did they lobby for maintaining the original living room spaces on the first floor?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Do you know anything about, what do you think about the new resident hall apartments and suites at OSU? Have you seen those?
I haven't.
Okay. What year did you graduate?
1958.
Okay. And again, what was your major?
FRCD, Family Relations and Child Development.
Okay.
And with that, I got a teaching degree.
Okay.
I was very, very fortunate and very proud of that fact. I don't know if that's still being awarded, but when I enrolled as a freshman in home economics, I think it was about the spring of my freshman year, and I was with my advisor, and she said, now you'll be taking chemistry. So I knew immediately I had to change my major. Because I really wanted to graduate. And so I found out that family relations and child growth and development majors did not have to take chemistry. So that became my major.
That became your major.
And it was an excellent choice.
Well, can you share with us some of the highlights of your life after leaving OSU, and where are you living now?
Bob and I were married the day after graduation, and we moved to the panhandle of Texas. Bob is an entomologist by profession and already had a job waiting for him. And then that fall I began teaching. I taught in the first grade because I thought that was what I was called to do. Got pregnant, and then we had our 3 children. And it was I guess Gina was about 2 when my husband said to me, I think you really need to go back to teaching. And I said, no, Bob, I'm a full-time homemaker. Don't you understand? And he just began planting little seeds around about going back to teaching. And he saw an article in the newspaper that we were living in Plainview, Texas, that the home economics teacher was resigning and they would be interviewing. And so he said, why don't you just for the heck of it go for the interview? So I did, and if I would work on my master's, and we're just 45 minutes away from Texas Tech, they would like for me to be on staff. By this time, I could just hardly wait to start teaching. So I taught for a couple of years at Wayland Baptist College, and the children grew up to be normal, even without me being a full-time mother. And then we moved to Yuma, Arizona. We had a child that was asthmatic, and it seemed best to move to that climate. And once out there, I began teaching at Arizona Western College in the Human Development Department. And taught there for about 7 years, and took a professional leave of absence. And then from there, I went into real estate and have been in real estate for many years.
Wow.
The highlight has been our children, seeing them raised, and now I'm living in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Oh, it's a beautiful place.
It is.
Oh my gosh. Have you ever been able to get back to Stillwater much since you've left?
Not much, but have been able to come back.
Great. Does it still feel like the same when you step on campus?
Well, if I'm on the corner of Theta Pond and Willard. If I'm anywhere else.
It's not the same.
Not the same. Even the Union is different.
Really? Oh, yes. And they're getting ready to expand it to some more. Why do you think that the women of Willard have stayed so close through the years and continue to have reunions after 50 years?
Oh, the commonalities we've had. We have all had a faith in God that has constantly drawn us together. We're from small towns, and I just think you have a deeper understanding. And so our values are very similar. Mm-hmm. The way we value our families, the way we value our husbands, the way we value our particular role in life. And it's so nice to be able to have that kind of communication. It's just amazing that 50 years later, we can connect with so much comfort.
Yes. How many reunions have you participated in, and where have you gone with those?
I made one of the early ones when it was in southwestern, a state park, I think in southwestern Oklahoma, and then wasn't able to make any in there for a long gap, and then about 8 years ago, we all met up at South Fork, Colorado. It's just so much fun to get together and laugh.
Yeah, that's what makes it all worthwhile.
Yes.
I'm going to talk a little bit just about the general OSU experience, and hopefully you can share some things with me. We talked a little bit about your classes, and you talked about the psychology class. Were there any ones within your major that really stand out? And you mentioned the one professor, but is there one of those professors that really influenced you as far as that? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Mary Cox.
Okay.
She was in FRMCD. I just remember her teaching was her giving me a personal explanation. There I was in a room full of, what did we have in class? Maybe 50 or 60 students, I don't remember. But she was excellent. She was excellent. And she was like an example. So when I was teaching later, I would remember her. And then another class that meant so much to me was interior design. Don't know why, but my husband and I built a house about, was it about 6 years after we were married? And I could have pulled those notes out and followed them because that teacher, and I'm sorry I can't remember her name, but she taught such basic information that all I had to do is run it through the think tank and we could produce.
talk about homecoming. Did you participate in homecoming?
No,
You know, being active in student government and stuff, I'm just wondering if homecoming was something you were able to participate either through Willard or through another organization.
I don't remember anything in particular. I just remember it was important. And I remember it was, I just thought it was so wonderful when your date got you a corsage. That beautiful mom to me. I have a dear friend who knew that I was coming back for this homecoming, and he said, Janie, I live 2 hours from Arizona State, and I don't even know when their homecoming is, and you're going to go all the way back to Oklahoma? I said, gosh, I can't miss it. So it's a feeling that draws us. Don't know what it is, but it's great fun.
It is. What were some of the student hangouts that you remember on campus or off campus?
Oh, it would be on campus, and it would be Theta Pond.
Okay.
And the library.
Okay.
I remember Bob and I would meet on the ground floor. I love to meet. Do you still have it in the library? It would be on the main floor, those nice lounge areas where you could sit in the chair and go to sleep.
Those were on the second floor, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I remember. That was a great meeting place with the girlfriends.
They had huge high ceilings.
Yes,
Yes.
loved that. And then, of course, fourth floor on at the Union.
Yeah, that was a great place. Is there anything that, you know, on your way down here that you could really pull and remember that you really wanted to share with us that I haven't touched upon?
You've covered, I can't think of anything that we've left out.
So, well, I think I've covered everything. I just know that what you've said has really been very valuable, and, you know, just speaking how you feel about OSU, especially from your heart, means a lot. And you can tell that you've really thought about what you've learned from here, and I'm very impressed with that. I really have nothing else to say. I just want to thank you very much for coming, and I wish you all the very best luck with your friends, and I just know you're going to have a great time.
Thank you so much.